All right, it's time for our final preview of the regular season. Last game of the year, LSU. Got a lot riding on this game. It's going to be the difference between 8-4, 9-3. And the big difference there, right? Trying to keep momentum. This is going to be one heck of a game. I'm in full agreement. If you've seen the last two videos, you know where I stand on this. By the way, 3 in a row. It must be some sort of record. So if you haven't liked and subscribed yet, go ahead and do that. I'm putting out more content than I ever have so far. But part of the reason for that is because I just don't have some of the capabilities I had earlier in the year, and so some of the time I was able to spend on certain things can't do anymore. So that's why you're not seeing some of the film footage breakdown right now. So just can't quite handle the RAM at this point, but gonna change that up over the off season. So before we get into that, that's just a quick explanation of what's going on. Uh, let's talk about the storyline for this game. There's a lot going on here. I think behind the scenes, a lot for LSU. You probably know b.t.h.o is out after this game. They really made no bones about it. They've been looking. You've heard they were looking for Jimbo. They wanted Jimbo. They weren't going to take anything else except Jimbo, and it doesn't seem like that's going to happen so far. I'm not going to fully hold my breath. I completely believe Jimbo will be back in Aggie land, but I want to see that happen. And then I'll take a sigh uh, and exhale. So he's out. He's on his way out. These players seem to really like him a lot, and they're going to play for him. So this is not just your run of the mill into the game year. They're playing for a bowl eligibility. They're 5-6, and they want that extra game. They want to play for Coach O. They want to get him that extra game, and so this is going to be more along those rivalry type games. You know how it was when we played Texas. When we played Texas, it didn't matter who was the better team that year. Any one of those teams could have won that game, and I think the same is going to be true here. And so I think we're finally getting into the territory of rivalry game with LSU. We've been talking about it for a few years. We wanted it to happen for a number of years. We beat them in 7 overtimes. We've taken the last 2 out of 3. We get this one, it'll be 3 out of 4, which in my opinion that will solidify the rivalry. Um, so they're playing for a bowl game. They're playing for b.t.h.o, and we don't quite have something like that to play for. We're playing for ourselves. We're playing for what we've been playing for the entire year. We have something to play for. Don't get me wrong, but it's just not those types of things, right? If we had a coach that was on the out and some of these players had been recruited by that coach, yeah, you have a little bit more of something to grab a hold of to say that we're playing for this and we're playing for that. But of course, check out the last video. Talked about some of these things a little bit more in depth. So there is a lot going on. Give you a quick background on this. What we're gonna look at tonight, we're gonna go stats heavy, right? And full disclaimer: stats don't win games. That was my biggest takeaway from the Ole Miss game. We looked at the stats, and I'll give you my model, show you what it kind of predicts, and I'll talk about that here. But it is not a predictive measure in that sense. It's based off of what teams tend to do in any given game, especially a rivalry game. Teams don't have to tend to what they've been doing, so keep that in mind. But we'll give it a good sense and get a good feeling for what these two teams are doing, so that we'll know what they have a likelihood of doing on Saturday. So let's go ahead and get right on into it. All right, so instead of getting into the red zone data first, I want to go through pass and rush to start off with. I think this will at least, kind of focus us in on everything that happens between the two 20s, because you've got to go through all that usually before you get to the red zone anyways. So we might as well start with that and then focus in on the red zone after we've decided who can navigate those waters better. So in pass defense, LSU is 73rd. Pass offense, A&M is 95th. So I want to give you these in this format so that you can see what the differences is and what the matchups will be. So LSU is essentially holding opponents to 7.2 yards per attempt. A&M's getting 6.7. So maybe we can expect there to be A&M to do about their average. Now, I think this is a big deal that I wanted to focus on this time around for this preview, which is the home and away aspect of this. And at home, LSU drops their yards per attempt down to 6.4. Likewise, when A&M is going on the road, they're dropping down significantly to 5.1. Now, though, I did look at the last three Power 5 matchups, so I took LSU's matchup against Louisiana and A&M's matchup against Prairie View, tossed that out, and then came up with these numbers. When you do that, in the last three, LSU's back up to 7.3 yards per attempt being allowed, and then A&M is shooting back up to 6.5. So a little perspective there about what each is going to be able to limit the other one to, and then what the offense is going to be able to do perhaps. On the flip side, you see what LSU's offense is doing in the passing game versus what A&M's defense is allowing in the pass game. A&M's offense ranked 39th overall in the passing game. A&M's, however, is 11th overall in pass defense, allowing just 5.5 yards per attempt. When you look at the home and away stats, A&M has not been as good as they have at home when they go on the road. And so you can see that jump up the whole yard per attempt to 6.5. LSU stays relatively stable for their overall average for what they're doing at home. Now, we look at the last three, though. There is a bit of a significant decrease for LSU's offense, dropping down to 6.1. Again, I held out Louisiana. So this consists of, I believe, Arkansas, Ole Miss, and Alabama with their last three games. For us, that's going to consist of Ole Miss, Auburn, and I believe South Carolina. So ours shows to be holding the other team to 4.9 yards per attempt in the last three matchups. So pretty significant there, and something definitely to take root on. Our defense does not seem like it's one that's so good in the passing game, but as you can see with these stats here as of late and overall, it's actually a pretty solid unit. All right, so going through the passing game first, what do you think? Based off the matchup, do you think we're ahead? Do you think they're ahead? I really wanted to do it this way because I felt like one of the things that was missing in the last preview that I did for the Ole Miss game was taking into consideration some of the matchups. This way you get to see the defense and the offense side by side and what those matchups would look like. It doesn't tell a full story, don't get me wrong, but you have some dynamic players in the passing game for LSU. You've got Batty, Johnson's their normal quarterback. They have had Newsmeyer play a little bit. Our defense consisting of Jalen Jones, Chappelle, Damani, Antonio Johnson for nickel, and Leon has been a unit that's been pretty good, but they have had their flaws. So it depends on what we get out of them versus these receivers. LSU has a lot of talent on the team, so there's a lot to consider for these matchups, and this gives me a pretty good idea. I think based off of this data, if A&M plays their game in the passing game, we have a pretty good chance of limiting them quite a bit. I also think this is an important stat because Ole Miss beat us in this area in large part through the passing game. Even though their running game was pretty surprising, I think their passing game is what enabled them to do so much. So, and I think that will probably stand true for LSU. Now, transitioning into the rush, this is LSU's offense versus A&M's defense. What do you notice right off the bat? Probably two things for me. One is LSU 107th in rush offense, 3.2 yards per carry overall. A&M's defense is not fantastic, but they are managing 47th. 107th is almost inexcusable for an SEC offense. And then you see the drop when in the last three games for LSU. So 2.4 yards per carry. A&M, however, is allowing 4.9. Our last three games, this doesn't include Alabama, but we did have Ole Miss and Auburn, and we did give up some yards on the ground. So uh, versus our defense, though, I think that we can do a good job of probably making them a little bit more one dimensional. The passing game is not fantastic for LSU either. Run game is obviously not fantastic either. That probably gives us a bit of the edge on these two areas, and I think that this does make them look more one dimensional, which is something that's been our Achilles heel, in my opinion. So this is kind of good for me to see, and hopefully we can take advantage of this. It up is important. So now looking at LSU's defense versus our offense, they're 58th. They're holding their own. Top 60 rush defense. They're allowing 3.9 yards per carry. On offense, though, we're pretty salty. We are 33rd. We're getting 5.5 yards per carry. Um, we were stymied a little bit against Ole Miss, as you saw. We were getting some breakthroughs on the offensive line. Not our best game. At home, LSU is actually doing a bit better. They're only allowing 3.1, so I think this is an interesting matchup since we're going to Death Valley to play at night. When we're away, though, we're still holding down a pretty good average, 5.2, and that's maintaining the last three games. Theirs is too, so I think the tell of the story is going to be a little bit more about our defense versus their offensive rush and how that's going to play out. However, make a big note here, right? Because we did not play so well against Ole Miss, and we're going to need to play a bit different. Ole Miss laid the game plan for how to beat us and make us one dimensional. They crowded the box. They played the run very well, very similar to how Arkansas played us as well. Passing is not our strong suit. We're having trouble getting open receivers, and so if you're going to play the run on us and really limit us there, then it's really difficult for us to move the ball. So that could definitely play into LSU's favor since they can make their defense more one dimensional and play more directly at the run. They also have always have fantastic secondary and DBs, so they can do cover zero and play lights out. So this probably goes advantage them on this side. So I'll make this an even overall wash. Okay, something kind of important to note before we look at tackles for loss and sacks, some of those negative play opportunities that go on. Yeah, I think it's important to note whenever I was looking at first downs, um, LSU in the last three games has been getting 20 or less first downs on average per game. They're only getting about 0.75 points for each first down. So less than a point on average for each of their first downs that they gain. So it's taking them well over seven first downs just to get 7 points or a touchdown. A&M though is still doing 1.3, and we've been doing that most of the year. Um, so against Ole Miss, we just didn't have a lot of ball movement. We still generated some points, and so that's why it's still averaging out because we had 19 against Ole Miss to their 27. We gave up a lot of first downs in that game though too. So and they didn't score a whole bunch of points. So our sort of how that's working to and back and forth on how many points we're allowing teams to get on first downs is a little bit escalated when I looked at it versus what we are getting when we're on offense. So LSU has a pretty big problem scoring points based off of this, and so again we're kind of got a bit of a wash that's taking place for me. The rush and the pass offense so far is a wash just because I think back to how one dimensional we can be, as I was talking about before. And yes, we probably lead in passing D, rush D, probably rushing offense as well. They probably slight edge on passing offense themselves, but overall on paper probably looks like we have the edge in these two categories, especially when you take into account how the matchups work. But which one of these teams is most easily made one dimensional? Right now, I've seen us so much. I know LSU's not that great, but I think we have shown a weakness that we can be made one dimensional fairly easy. So I put that out there as kind of like a disclaimer as well, because whereas I'm showing this on paper and I'm optimistic that we have the better team and that we should play like that, I'm trying to also catch myself and find ways that it's possible for us to lose this game so that I'm being realistic for you guys. I don't want to lead you astray. That's not what I'm here to do. So I want to keep it a very well-grounded approach. So let's go ahead and get on into the negative plays and see what's happening when tackles for loss and sacks are factored in. Okay, here we're looking at what LSU has allowed versus the sacks that A&M is getting on defense. To be real clear about that again, trying to show you the matchup aspect of this. A few things jump out at me right off the bat. We're pretty closely related in this and what we're getting versus what's being allowed. LSU is ranked 10th in the nation. They're giving up a fairly low total of 2.9 sacks per game, but we're getting three even, good enough for 20th. And then but I see what the dynamic here is in the home versus away. So home they're even more stingy, and we're not getting very many on the road so far. We're only getting 1.5. That's a red flag for me, especially if we're going to go to Death Valley, if we're going to play at night, hostile environment. But you look at the last three, and so how the home and away dynamic works versus what LSU's been doing recently. They've been giving up 4.3 in the last three games. Again, Power 5 games. That to me says that this is at least something that's a balancing factor versus how these teams are going, and so it's more recent as well. And I'm more concerned about what's happening recently versus overall. I do think teams tend to be what they are this time of year. When you're looking at overall picture, they're not going to do something drastically different, but right now they're just not playing as well on the offensive line, and they are giving up a few more sacks than they would normally. So 4.3 is a pretty large total, and we have tend to be doing pretty well in this category. So I'm looking for a big game out of our ends. All right, so let's go ahead and go over here and switch it up. Let's take a look at what LSU has been getting in sacks and what A&M has been allowing. So LSU ranked 31st overall, A&M 41st overall for what we've been allowing. Again, that's for a season-long average. Home and away, you see what's taking place there. We are also only allowing 1.5. When they're at home, they're still getting a little bit of an uptick, 3.1, something you would expect. What is a little bit unexpected is what's happened the last three games. Again, A&M has played Ole Miss, Auburn, and I believe South Carolina, and in all of those games, we only gave up one sack. So that's why it's such a low total. Offensive line has been doing really well in pass protection. And so you might be thinking to yourself, well, if we've been doing so well in pass protection, then what's been holding our passing game back? We'll talk about that on the cleanup on the backside, I think. But I think we kind of all know the two main factors that are getting to that. This seems to look like we're going to limit negative plays when it comes to sacks. We're also going to look at tackles for loss. Right now, I think we've got the clear advantage when it comes to sacks. We're probably going to get as many or more sacks when we're on defense, and we're going to give up significantly less if things continue the way they should trend based off of this data. All right, you're going to notice right off the bat in the tackles for loss that they're pretty elite in this area. They may not get a lot of sacks. I mean, they're getting their fair share, but their tackles for loss, they're 15th in the nation overall. The last three games, they are getting 8.6 tackles for loss. We're allowing 4.3. That's not a shabby number. We're 47th overall, allowing 5.4 tackles for loss per game over the entire season, right? But let me tell you, this really causes concern for me, as I was been talking about with this game, and especially in relationship to Ole Miss. We're not giving up a lot of sacks, but one of the things that you saw Ole Miss do was shoot the gaps, and they were able to get penetration, especially on our run plays. And we had a number of times that we were tackled for loss. It has been, I think, also one of our more specific weaknesses, where we are getting tackled on direct run plays and giving up negative yardage on those things. So this is something that tells me that they could do something similar to what Ole Miss did to us, and stacking up these negative plays is cause for concern. Maybe this is also part of the reason why, since we've been so good at pass protection, while we tried to pass quite a bit more against Ole Miss, we were all thinking, well, Spiller and a chain, we got to give these guys the ball, but we've had some issues there, and so it kind of makes sense. Maybe we switched up our game plan to there. Although we're not as effective in the passing game, maybe it was kind of making sense. So we'll see if we're going to dial up a little bit of a similar game plan based off of these numbers. Otherwise, offensive line is going to need to step up, and we're going to make sure we're hitting our blocks and diagnosing where these guys are coming from off these run blitzes. All right, so switching it up, you'll notice that we're pretty elite in the tackle for loss category as well. Yes, you're also noticing that they are allowing 5.4 tackles for loss per game, and they are ranked exactly the same as us. This category is such that you get a lot of teams that end up being tied with similar numbers. So that is accurate. It's not a typo. I double checked it myself because I was thinking the same thing as I went through this. But you see, even when these numbers are switched, both teams are doing fairly even. So when it comes to tackles for loss, what you may be seeing a little bit more from us though is sack numbers. So probably what you're seeing from them is tackles for loss, on running plays. So how that dynamic will factor in to shape the dynamic of this game will be interesting to watch, particularly for this one. Again, thinking about how Ole Miss did that to us, if they do something similar, then we probably end up expecting a similar result. We are definitely going to have to run the ball against Ole Miss. Against LSU, but I think that the ability to run the ball against LSU is going to hinge on whether or not we can get some passes completed, and so they're going to probably play us very similar to the way that Ole Miss did. So if our offensive line can step up in this area, I really think this game could actually end up getting out of hand. If we have any success running the ball, I think we were just going to mop the floor with them. But that's a big but, right? That we're going to have to do that. So we'll see what they do. We'll see what they come with. I'm expecting an inspired group out of that defensive line for LSU. So this is what we can look for. Now, whoever does all that better will have the opportunity to play in the red zone and potentially get points. This is our national rankings for both. This is Red Zone O. LSU not the greatest in this area. And that probably stems from them just not having probably a lot of identity on offense, not being able to run the ball well. A&M on the other hand doing fairly well. Not world beaters, doing well in conference, and then you can see the differential in touchdown versus field goal so far. They're getting 19 touchdowns to eight field goals, and we're getting 20 to 15. I think the difference in this is probably a little bit more consistency from our field goal kicker. So we get down there and we are getting points. It may just be 3. We saw this a lot with Alabama when we kind of got down that way. We had to kick a few field goals, and we've done that throughout the year. So I expect this will probably continue, but we're going to have to see. We struggled against the Ole Miss, as I keep going back to, and that run game was just not the same as we had been seeing it for most of the year. So if we put it back together how we expect that run game to be, I expect these numbers to hold, and I expect us to do well in the red zone. I think this final slide here probably characterizes what's going to kind of be the tell of the game. This is Red Zone D, and this has a lot to do again with our D overall. You see them ranked 11th in the nation. They're allowing 0.71% of the time. LSU's is 78th. They're allowing 84% of the time for their opponents to get points. When we get in a conference, it's 75%, and when it's versus a ranked team, it's 81%. And so what I'm saying here is that our defense is a good defense. They're definitely borderline, I think, elite, with a few things missing and or just needing to kind of come together for it to really kind of get that way. They've had 11 games to do it. I think they can make it in their 11th game, and I think they want to. I think they feel like they need to, and I think they're going to be pretty stingy. So I think this is going to really dictate how this game's going to end up on how our D plays. I think we can hold them to a really low total. Um, and I think we can win on something like 10 or 12 points again. So look for our D to really step up and play this game at the highest level they have all year. So last I checked, we were, I think, a 6.5 point favorite. I think the over under was somewhere in the neighborhood of 46. I really, thinking about that over under total, I think this is probably going to be under. We've what Ole Miss 19 points. We lost that game against Auburn. 20 points. We won that game. Right before that, South Carolina. South Carolina's who they are. Definitely think LSU is much better than South Carolina. So I don't expect us to go out and get 44 points. I just see this as it's going to be a game where our offense is going to have difficulty scoring again. We've had that numerous times throughout the year against pretty quality teams. Yes, LSU is not exactly a quality team this year, but I'll tell you, I looked back at the talent that's on their team, and I had said earlier in the season that this is the first year that our 3-year recruiting average is better than Auburn's. We are not quite there yet with LSU. They, I think, have a class ranking average over the last 3 years of 4. I mean, it's either 4 or 6. And then ours is, I think, right at 8. So we are just a little bit removed from that. Yes, very comparable, but there's still, even in those upper echelon recruiting classes, you're looking at numbers that are still significant. They have talent on the team. So they can go out and do something, even though they're 5 and 6. A game came up that reminded me, and makes me again be very cautious and wary. And it was, I think, in 2007. It was Sherman's last game. I believe we had Texas at home, if I'm not mistaken, and we basically just completely mixed up our game plan. We had not been a pass-heavy team all year long, and they just could not cope with that, if memory serves me correct. So we kind of punched them in the mouth that way, and we kept firing all night long. If LSU comes out and plays something, a game that we're not really accustomed to, I do worry about that. I worry about things that we haven't necessarily would account for or expect, and I think that can get us off our game plan. And then from there it's going to be who wants it more. And I think this team that we're going to be playing is a team that wants it quite a bit. They're not playing for a conference championship. They're not playing for a playoff berth or anything like that. But they're still a hungry team, as we talked about for all those reasons before. So are we. So are we. But we don't have home field advantage. That's for sure. And we got a lot to contend with, our own demons and different things that we've had struggles over the year. So. Yeah, I think I'm looking at this as a low scoring total. And I think if the defense does what we think that they can do, what they have done at times, I think this is going to be a really low scoring game, and it can definitely keep us in this game. I don't see us scoring much more than about 17 points. So that's where I've got this for us, 17 points. I've got LSU. I think that our defense is going to be pretty stingy. I really do. So I've got them at 10 points. I think we're going to win this one 17-10. That's about what the first down model predicts, somewhere in that area. Just a little bit higher, but I'm going to go a little bit lower on this one. I think that model ended up somewhere in the neighborhood of having us at about 24 points, and LSU at somewhere around 15. I just don't think it's going to be that high. I think this game does have a big potential for us to really blow the doors off, though. We are a good team. Calzada has something to play for in my mind to prove himself. If he has a game that we know he's capable of, but it's probably not his average game that he's normally going to have, Like I said, he's probably somewhere right in the B area type of player that has the potential for A, on occasions. And he's had maybe a couple of those games. He's gotten away with a few Bs, and he's had that C game for sure against Ole Miss, and along the way in other places too. Of course, we don't expect him to play fantastically against Colorado in those first few games, Arkansas, Mississippi State, but he can play at that level. And if he even has a B game, I think we have a very good potential to put up 25 plus points. So how he plays, how our receivers play, that's the big thing that I was talking about earlier. We've had trouble getting separation. Calzada has had some inaccuracies this year, throwing behind receivers. Is also his delivery's been late, and we saw that in the Ole Miss game in large part. But the defense can keep us in this game at any time. And so if we're only able to manage, say 12 to 17 points, we're still in this game. If we have a B game out of Calzada, I don't see how we lose this game. If we get a B game from him, I see us putting up 25 points, and I don't see this being an issue. I think our defense is going to hold them under 20 points. They haven't been a great offense all year. They've got their issues in the running game and passing game, and that plays into some of our strengths. So that's where I see this game happening. So very hopeful. I really want to get to 9-3. I really want 9-3. So I'm holding out for a really good result. I hope this model holds. If it doesn't, I still see pathways for us to win, and that's encouraging. There's definitely a couple pathways for us to lose. So hopefully we made some adjustments, and hopefully we learned and got back to our basics and corrected those things. I have faith in Jimbo. I think he picked the right school. I think he wants to be here, and so I think the results are going to show. So let's do it. Let's go beat the hell out of LSU.